Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the movie discussion Pocket Dimension, where time does not exist. The only thing that matters is film. I'm Jay. That's
Almost
Cole.
got it.
Almost.
Oh.
Today we're going to be discussing the film Byzantium from 2012, continuing with our vampire theme. And you hadn't seen this film before, so why don't you let me know what you thought about it?
Yeah. Continuing our vampire theme, which was just sort of just sort of an offshoot of the way we've been doing themes lately. We're not trying to put too much thought or effort into it. It started where I was just like, oh, it's January. There's a lot of snow. Maybe some snow movies, and that's how we got the right one in and let me in, which has vampires. So it's like, so why not something else with vampires? And we'll let you know later on that we have something else sort of vague coming up in the near future. But yeah, so this is a film that I'd heard the title of, and that was really all. Like, I heard the title and I thought maybe it was about vampires, like I'd heard, but I couldn't even remember. Yeah, maybe that has vampires in it. I don't know, and stuff. And I knew it was like a British film, but I didn't know the people involved. This stars an actress I know pretty well, Saoirse Ronan. That is how you pronounce her name, by the way. It's a very odd, very strangely spelled Irish name.
I'm glad you did it. I would have butchered it.
Yeah, it comes from Irish Gaelic. It actually translates to freedom. But I remember that her name is Saoirse because I went to see, not this year, but the year before, when I was at one of the big films they were screening at the Atlantic Film Festival that was like an early screening before hitting theaters was the film Brooklyn. And that she starred in that. And when I went to see that, that was a full house. The theater was packed. And I don't know who the film festival people were that were there, but there were a whole bunch of them there. Maybe some people that were at least vaguely connected to the film, like they didn't have any of the main people and stuff. And like one of the very first things they did when they were talking about her was tell the audience how to say her name. And so I guess it sort of stuck with me that her name is Saoirse. But
I mean, it's kind of understandable because it's not anything like how it's spelled.
Right. No, Gaelic is really weird. I'm from Cape Breton, so I kind of have like a good understanding of that. For instance, a popular Gaelic word that people know is Cayley. Now, a Cayley means like sort of a party or a get together. The way Cayley is spelled is like this is paraphrasing. This isn't, but this is the ballpark of how you spell Cayley. It's like Ceildh. So try to get Kaylee from that, you know. It looks like it's Sealed or something like that. But so yeah, Gaelic's a pretty interesting language. And then Irish Gaelic, of course, is a little different on top of that. So yeah, so you've got Saoirse Ronan and also Gemma Arterton in the lead roles, both playing vampires. And yeah, I like this movie quite a bit. I guess what sticks out about it is that it was directed by Neil Jordan, who had done quite a few sort of well-known movies, but what jumps off the page, I guess, is that he'd done a much more high-profile vampire film, the film adaptation of Interview with a Vampire. And people who watch this show know exactly what I think of Anne Rice and stuff like that. So to just clear up any confusion, yes, I really dislike the Interview with the Vampire movie, but that said, I don't lay that at Jordan's I don't lay that at Jordan's door. I think it's a perfectly competently directed film. I just think it happens to be based on a shitty book. So I don't hold that against the director in any way, shape, or form. It's kind of interesting that he would turn and do another sort of vampire movie. And as different as it is, I think it actually shares a lot of common themes. But anyway, needless to say, I like it a lot better. And it also, because it does, you know, some sort of unique things, like the whole sort of origin of the vampires is something, you know, we haven't seen before that I like very much. So,
very cool. Gothic feel to it.
Right, because this is a movie that's contemporary. It's set around 2010 or whatever. It came out in 2012, but it has some good flashbacks to basically around the early 19th century during the Napoleonic Wars. And and it's really well done, good costumes and sets and stuff like that. And it has, like you said, that gothic feel, which I don't always need with vampires, but I always do think helps. And people have heard me harp about why I have problems with werewolf movies, is I don't feel like werewolf movies fit into contemporary times the way vampires do. So I prefer my werewolf movies to be like 19th century or earlier, because I don't like them in modern times. Vampires, I think, are flexible enough to fit in both, but still I appreciate this. I really liked the flashbacks. You know, and this is one of those films where the backstory, the flashbacks are revealed to us gradually over the course of the film. It's not given to us all at once. And, you know, I appreciate that kind of storytelling when it's told well. I realize sometimes when you're jumping between times, it can be confusing. This movie, I don't think there's any issue with that. It's not confusing. I think it's pretty well done, especially considering the flashbacks are based on, well, not a journey or diary, but journal or diary, but basically sort of the same thing of the character writing it down, because you get a little bit of her narration to start each scene for it, to just sort of like let you know where you're at again. So that keeps it pretty straightforward. So I don't think anybody would have any trouble with that.
You know, Neil Jordan also directed The Crying Game, which I still haven't seen. It's been on my list for years, but I remember that being a pretty big movie in the '90s, the early '90s.
I mean, that's a good movie, especially, it's just one of those movies, it's one of those very few movies that just has like a giant like left turn in the middle of it that I know everybody already heard of, because it just starts off in one way, and like, yeah, it just seems like it's going to be a completely different movie, and then the whole issue of the being the person involved discovering is like transsexual or whatever, you know, turns the whole movie around.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that still doesn't take over the plot entirely. It just becomes like a big part of the plot. It still has very much to do with, you know, the troubles in Ireland and the IRA and the bombings and stuff like that. That's all still front and center. You just have this new thing thrown into it. So that's a really good movie. I mean, I don't love it or anything, but the weirdest part is that Forrest Whitaker is in that movie. That's always going to throw me. Why? Why is it Forrest Whitaker?
Does he have an Irish accent?
Yes, he has an Irish accent. Not a good one. Not a good one.
Yeah, Forrest Whitaker's not a good actor.
No, he's in movies because he just sort of has like a distinct look, I think. Because that's what you need for some actors, you know, that's how they get by, especially character actors. There's something distinct about their face and stuff like that. He's kind of like that. Like, I don't think he like ruins movies he's in, but I don't think he's particularly going to be a strong point in any of it either. And he is the main character in this movie. And
you know, he also played a samurai.
Yeah. I mean, there are black Irish guys. Yes, there are. I'm not going to pretend they're not. And I'm not even going to say it's just because he's black. It's because it's Forrest Whitaker. It just throws you. I can't help it. But still, that is a good movie, and I hope you get around to seeing it sometime. It's not amazing. Like, you know how some of these movies, especially when they have some sort of like social issue like that thrown in, they get this huge reputation. I don't think it would deserve all that. But it's certainly a good movie. And the reveal scene is pretty good. Like, when he finds out, that is pretty good. I like how they do that.
Yeah.
That's the same actor that was the weird like androgynous pharaoh thing in Stargate a couple years later.
Really?
Yeah. That actor, I'm avoiding the pronouns because I don't know what the right one is to use anymore but that actor has passed away, hasn't she? I believe. I'll have to look into that.
I'm not sure.
I'm just going to double check that.
Not quite sure who that is.
I'm going to double check.
But I was. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what's funny is because of like producers that were involved, The Crying Game is technically considered like a British, Irish / Japanese film, which I always think is hilarious. But it's just because of some of the backing they got and stuff like that. But no, this would have been Miranda Richardson, I believe. Am I right? No, hold on. That's not right. Hold on, that's not the right actor. Ah, shit. Ah, there it is. Jay Davidson, that's it. Okay, Jay Davidson didn't die. Sorry about that. For some reason I thought they died. Anyway, Jay Davidson.
Wow.
Oh, okay, so does identify as male. Just has that androgynous... Okay, just has the androgynous ability to, play like a transgender. Okay. But as far as I know, does identify as a gay male. So, just to put that out there.
So we would say he.
So yes, we would say he.
Okay.
Because that's what I wasn't sure of either. I was like, but no, he just didn't stay in acting, I guess, is the thing. For some reason, I thought he died, but anyway, yeah, he plays Raw in Stargate. And again, the whole point is because he has that really androgynous look where you can't really tell and stuff. Actually did a lot of work as a model beforehand, which, yeah, I get. Like in the 80s, androgyny was sort of a hot thing because of like what David Bowie had done beforehand and stuff like that. So I can see that.
Boy George.
Yeah, sure. Boy George to a certain extent too. But anyway, I get it.
Yeah, I was going to say real quick, it's kind of surprising this film didn't really get any kind of release because, Neil Jordan's directing. It seems like it has a relatively large budget. It's got big actors attached to it. And, I saw this at a convention. It was a festival, and I hadn't even heard of it. And I don't think it got any kind of theatrical release here, but really enjoyed it when I first saw it. So it was nice to see that maybe like the only time I've ever seen a film at a festival, before it came out. So that was a nice experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, one of the times I got to do that was with Brooklyn, which starred the same actors. It was kind of interesting thing to tie it together there. But I hadn't realized he did the Brave one, which I liked the Brave one a lot.
Jodie Foster.
Yeah, I liked that. I mean, not a particularly original movie, but I liked it a lot. Actually, when I was looking at some of the movies on Shudder a couple months ago, I watched a movie that's sort of like the Brave one, but if you take out like all like the normal, all the normal like drama and stuff that make it a good movie, and just strip it down to exploitation. There's a movie on there called, I think, Ms. or maybe Miss. It's either Ms. or Miss 45.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's a cool movie. Yeah, it's kind of a similar, a very similar plot to the Brave one, but it's a stripped down, just down to exploitation, rape, revenge type movie. But yeah, that's a cool movie. But yeah,
it sucks in that movie, man. She gets raped twice, like in 2 hours.
Yeah, so that's why you really understand like why she starts killing like pretty much indiscriminately, like even people that like don't deserve it at all or never did anything wrong. It's like, yeah, I kind of get like her rage. It makes a certain amount of sense.
She's and not it does even
have a cool ending in that like she gets stopped by basically another woman because she's just not thinking about the fact that she's attacking people at a party. She's only targeting the men. The women don't know that. Nobody knows that, and she gets like taken down. She says like, it's the only time she says something because she's mute. She says sister or something. Yeah. Anyway, I enjoy that movie. It's a pretty cool one. And yeah, so that was something I got to see through Shudder, which was pretty cool. But yeah, the Brave one will come out many years later and be like kind of like that, but let's put the exploitation stuff aside and try to make an actual movie. And it's pretty good. I like it. So that's also Neil Jordan, which I didn't know. But yeah, so the Byzantium. One of the things was like, as I was watching it, I was trying to like look up and be like, why is it called Byzantium anyway? And then like it just shows up. It's like, oh, that's what the hotel they stay at is called. And then they have a later tie-in, which is kind of cool to tie into the ancient world or whatever. Because one of the just to let you know how old some of these vampires are and how long they've been around, because he says he got the sword in Byzantium. Byzantium was the original name of what is now Istanbul in Turkey, and what for many years, even before that, was Constantinople. But its original name was Byzantium. So if he said he got it in Byzantium, that would have been a long time ago. That would have been like before like the 15th century. So that's kind of a neat little tie-in, because at first I was just like, "Whoa, so they're just using this title? What does it mean?" But because sometimes I don't know, they just slap titles on movies because they think it sounds good. But this one actually sort of makes sense, so that's kind of cool.
So if they're trying to like stay under the radar and hide out, naming their brothel Byzantium is not a very good idea.
Well, it was already named that, is the thing.
Oh, okay.
It was named that when they showed up. It was just this out of commission hotel or bed and breakfast or whatever. And then they turn it into a brothel. So yeah, so what we've got is two vampires who, of course, have not aged, who are actually a mother and daughter, but they seem very close in age because of that. And at first you're kind of confused by like exactly how that works because we don't know. But eventually, what we find out is, these are not born vampires, and maybe there isn't any such thing as a born vampire. We have a woman who had a baby, and then got turned into a vampire, then returned to her baby when her baby was a teenager and turned her. Because one of the big differences about this movie is vampires don't create other vampires by biting people. That's one of the big things. And that's always and that's interesting because it just sort of skirts how it gets, how it always gets kind of sketchy in these movies and books and stuff like that. It's like, what is the rule exactly? Like, somebody gets bitten on the neck, but only a little bit, so they turn. But somebody gets bit too much and they die, but this takes out that guesswork. It's like, biting somebody does not turn them into a vampire. It can either really hurt them or completely kill them, depending on that, but it does not turn them. The vampires don't have that. But vampires do create other vampires, and it's actually pretty interesting, the mythology they build up. That's probably my favorite thing about the movie. And I also, which is this whole thing about the island, which is really cool. It just seems just so much like a story by H.P. Lovecraft. This whole dark island out in the sea that people the locals refuse to go near, and there's like this cave with like some unknown force. Like, so H.P. Lovecraft, I love it. So that was kind of a neat sort of twist on the whole vampire story.
Yeah, it's really
that's
cool.
How vampires are created.
You go in there, and then your doppelganger comes out and kills you.
Yeah, you have to go in and say, like, you accept death. Like, it's like you're getting a gift. Like, they're going to give you this gift, which is, like, to be a vampire and be immortal. But you have to say that you accept death first. And then once that happens, you're like, suddenly, whatever the force is, creates, like, a doppelganger of you that attacks you and briefly kills you. But then you wake up a vampire. And now you're not going to age and you're immortal. But the same other stuff going on. You have to drink blood and that. And the other wrinkle to it is that this is a completely male thing. Mm-hmm. That there aren't supposed to be any female vampires. That, like, going back to the beginning, however this worked, the idea was it was only reserved for like people highly placed in society, people of like high noble birth who had means and stuff like that. And the whole point was they would, as an organization, they call themselves a brotherhood. Obviously, they'd sort of work in the shadows, and they would select people who they thought were, good candidates to be that. And that's what we have going on here in the origin story, going back in the flashback, is that we've got this woman who's like just trying to get by, and then she winds up involved with these soldiers. And when the mean captain basically forces her into a life of prostitution, but the other guy that she knew, he winds up getting really sick after getting wounded in battle, and he's going to die, and he's desperate trying to find, and he starts to hear like the whispers and the rumors of this thing, and they're happy to take him on because he's highly placed in society. And and it goes from there how she gets turned. But it's really cool. I like it.
Mm-hmm. He probably has like pneumonia or something he caught in the war, right?
Yeah.
And it's always like it's something that seems like they go when they're ill with something, some sort of deadly disease. So
I guess it's just so they can keep it like a secret,
so
that they only pass it on to people like that.
It's really a cool idea of the the whole turning aspect. It's really different.
So anyway, he's happy to maybe pass it on to the captain, even though the captain is a complete dick and has actually been screwing him over in some ways. And what happens is the woman, the mother vampire in this, who had already had her child, who was separated from her, living in like an orphanage and stuff, she saw her chance to like steal the gift, and that's what she did, and that's how I found out. And then when she was revealed to the Brotherhood, they weren't happy about it, but they still sort of, they won't kill other vampires if they don't have reasons to. So they're like, you're not part of our Brotherhood, you're not part of anything, you're banished, but we won't take any action against you as long as you don't break the rules. And we get to see that she survived for 200 years basically not breaking the rules. And of course the movie starts with her breaking the rules, and that she kills one of the Brotherhood.
Well, she immediately broke the rules when her daughter was infected with syphilis.
Oh, yeah.
By being raped by the same dude that basically gave her syphilis and got her pregnant and all this other stuff. Basically abducted Clara and turned her into a prostitute. And then she had a baby that instead of murdering the baby, she gave it up for adoption. And it's really a terrible story.
I know, and in his revenge for like having syphilis and having her steal the gift, he knows that it's the daughter, so he tracks down the daughter and rapes her. So yeah, he's a really evil guy, and of course he does get what's coming to him and stuff. So yeah, so that's true. Yeah, in turning her daughter, she broke the rules right away, but that didn't go detected. They didn't know about it. But yeah, but what the movie catches up to us here in 2010 or whatever is that like finally like one of the brethren had been watching her and stuff, and she kills him. So now they're going to be after her, and that leads to their whole retreat. And the thing is, the mother doesn't even seem to really remember that this is the original area that they're from, and that's sort of like where this whole thing about the past comes up, is that they go to this small seaside community, and the daughter right away recognizes it, even though they haven't been there since presumably way back then, 2 centuries ago, and it's obviously so different. She just says right at the beginning, like, we've been here, and it starts triggering all this, and that's how the plot moves forward. Because I do like the idea too of you often have movies and stories and stuff where somebody has a secret and the secret gets out and stuff, and you have people that are very secretive and they can't tell their secret. What I like about her character is that she's just sick of having it, and she wants desperately to tell somebody. And you see at the beginning of the movie, like how she copes with that is she knows she can't tell anybody. Is she often writes it down just to get it out, but then she throws the pages away. We also see how she's sort of a benevolent, kind vampire, and that she only feeds on people that are ready for death. And that's how it opens too, that an old man living nearby has found her writings, pieced together what she is through some sort of amazing old man intuition. Because I think it's pretty amazing. Because I was really caught by surprise when he just says, "Oh yeah, I know what you are. Go ahead." Like I was like, "What?" Just because you caught some of the stuff she wrote, why do you believe it? But I'm just thinking, okay, he's an old guy. He's got wisdom and stuff, and he's showing her and saying how his life was sad, and he was in love with this woman who was actually married to his brother, and she never knew and stuff. And he thought, I've lived long enough, so she accepts, the gift of death, and that she feeds on him. All I can think of is, that has to still be a really rare situation, though. I don't know how she can get that often enough to survive. We see her, kill several old people every time, very gentle, and saying some little mantra to them about how she respects them and loves them and thanks them for their gift or sacrifice or blah, blah, blah. Like twice she, does it to like an old woman ailing in a hospital bed and stuff. I'm just like, how does she keep finding these people enough to actually survive on it? But then again, we don't know how often she's supposed to feed. And in fact, when she's being questioned by the school person, the school superintendent or wherever she is, who doesn't actually believe she's a vampire, even though they found the journals, she's just humoring her at this point. She says, "Well, how often do you feed?" And she's just like, I don't want to get into that." So that skirts that. We don't actually have to get to find out exactly what the rules are for how long she can go. But yeah, so they're both sort of good vampires, and that she will only kill people that like are accepting of it and consent to it. And while her mother's a little harsher than that, her mother at least tries to like kill like bad people, like the pimp and stuff like that.
Her immediate reaction is to, all right, we got to find some way where I can be a prostitute. Like wherever they move, that's like her first thing is
200 years.
We need to open a whorehouse.
She hasn't learned any new skills. It's just I'm going to be a stripper / prostitute, but hey, if we can open it, that way I can just make other people be the prostitutes and stuff. Because and you feel really bad for that guy who she's going to she's going to like blow him or something like that. But then he breaks down crying and talks about how he's really upset and lonely about his mother dying. And she gets the information out of him that his mother had passed on the hotel to him. And she's like, "Oh, cushy place." And he really cares. He's happy. He's happy to take her in and her sister and look after them both, and he genuinely cares about both of them. And right from the beginning, he's going to die one way or another. Yeah. She's going to kill him. Something's going to kill him, and you feel really bad. So not at all surprising when he does die, but you feel really bad because he's genuinely trying to help.
I don't think she
And
meant to kill him, though. I think that was an accident.
no, she didn't mean to, but she also didn't give it to him. And she was also completely ready to kill him at any point, as she would often say to her daughter, like if he finds out or if he gets in the way, I will kill him. Like she doesn't have any uh, problem with that. So as much as she doesn't deliberately kill him, she does just sort of casually, cause his death. So, and you feel really bad because he has come to care for both of them, which is, shows he's a genuine guy. It's not just like, oh, I can get sex from this woman. It's like, oh, she has a daughter, or well, he thinks sister and stuff, and like he genuinely cares about her and wants her to do well. And what he's trying to do at the end is like, he sees that they're fighting. He doesn't know what they're fighting about. Of course, she's fighting about wanting to reveal herself to Frank, the boy she met, and all this other stuff. He doesn't know what they're fighting about, but he doesn't want them to fight, and he's trying to stop her when she's yelling. She's like, no, you only make it worse. Please don't. So it shows that he's genuinely trying to care for her just as much as Claire.
You know what's interesting is Claire is pretty much painted as an awful character through most of the movie. When she first meets, the guy that lets him go and use his mother's house and all.
Yeah.
I can't find his name right off, but when she first meets him and he breaks down after she's going to give him pleasure or whatever, it really seems like she's compassionate and generally cares about his feelings. She's telling him that your mother would have been proud of you and stuff like that, which it's kind of contrary to how she acts in most of the movie.
Yeah, so you can either believe that she's had a moment of compassion, or you can believe that she's just that manipulative.
Yeah, I can see that too. Because she's immediately like, oh, your mother's house. Oh, what is it like? How big is it?
Right, exactly. And then, she takes it over and turns into a brothel, which he's not happy about, and he really doesn't want going on. Like, he's completely willing to help her and her sister and support them and stuff. And he even puts up for a while. Like I said, he's a really, really nice guy. So, yeah. So it seems more... And again, she doesn't have any attachment to him. She's completely ready to just kill him at any moment if she needs to. And then she winds up sort of inadvertently killing him. But, yeah, like, nobody even says a word about it. He just gets killed and nobody even comments on it. You feel pretty bad. I felt pretty bad for him. But just to get the name straight, yeah, Eleanor Webb, and her mother is Clara or Claire. And the other thing, another name that's kind of interesting is the captain that was so bad. His name is Captain Ruthven, which is an allusion to one of the older vampire stories, maybe the oldest known vampire story in English. An 1819. Story called The Vampire with the Y in there, where one of the main characters is also called that.
One of the big differences in modern vampires is sunlight.
And that came with the Nosferatu movie, which was just putting a new take on Dracula, as we talked about before. That Dracula never actually had that, but when they made the Nosferatu movie and they made their changes, that was one of the major ones. And as we said, Dracula is the big one that everybody knows. A lot of people don't know Nosferatu or the rules, but that's the one thing that endured from Nosferatu. Because that's how the movie ends, him getting killed by the sunlight, and then they just sort of combined them going forward. It was the one thing from the Nosferatu thing that the other vampire fiction would take up. But yeah, actually, I think it would surprise people that a lot of what I consider the better vampire fiction just has vampires. Maybe they don't not as powerful in the day, but they're fine. They're not going to like burn to a crisp or anything, and they're not sleeping in coffins. Not that I mind that. I'm fine with stories where they do that too. I'm just saying, but in this, they're basically ordinary people in the daytime. I don't like their mode of attack, though. That they just have like a big thumbnail.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to make it different as possible.
At first, I didn't mind because I just thought it was her unique thing. But then when I saw that just all of them do it, including the males, that kind of bothered me. I was just like, really? I thought it was just like her unique thing, like a way to like sneakily kill people and stuff. Like, I didn't really think that the Brotherhood would do that, but they do. But it's not a huge deal. Like you said, it's something that makes it a little different. But
well, they don't have fangs, right?
I guess not. They never show a scene where they have fangs, but they're capable of tearing into people's flesh. I mean, I know you can do that with human teeth, but still, it would be more difficult.
We need to get MythBusters.
Because there's a couple times, because there's a few times through the movie where they show the authorities with the two characters from the Brotherhood mixed in, following their trail. There's a couple times where they investigate a couple of the victims, including the pimp on the beach, and they turn him over, and you very clearly see he's got the two distinct holes in his neck, which really does suggest fangs. So I don't know.
Huh. Okay.
But yeah, there's never a shot of suddenly one of them getting their bloodlust and they go and suddenly they have fangs, because that's usually how it works too, right? The vampires have normal teeth until it's kind of like a cat with retractable claws. It's like the fangs only come out when they're ready to feed. But it doesn't seem like these guys have it because they never make a point of showing it happening. So yeah, we have a few things going on here. Them being hunted by the Brotherhood, and also her, Eleanor, getting involved with this boy, Frank, who she, genuinely has real feelings for.
Caleb Landry Jones.
And as I said, and I'm going to break my own rule here, because I usually get annoyed by movies where, like, it's a sympathetic vampire or there's a bunch of sympathetic vampires. This, I like how they sort of do it, because even the bad guys are kind of sympathetic. They're not the usual heartless brutes that see humans as cattle. They have their own sort of honor about them. They don't seem particularly bloodthirsty. Yeah, they're all about surviving, getting on with it. But, you never... And yes, they will callously kill people to get in their way, as we see. It's just awful what they do to that superintendent in the car. There's this great shot, like, where he's telling her to shut up, and then he, like, snaps her neck or whatever. And there's that great shot where, she thinks that she's handcuffed in the back seat, and she thinks her mother's about to get killed. And then when her mother actually gets saved, when her mother comes back and gets into the car, and there's like a moment shot from the front through the windshield or whatever of them reuniting and her like hugging her. And just in the front, you can just see the woman like right in the foreground, which is just like,
she's the whole reason that they know where they are in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Because the boyfriend brought the journals to the principal or the teacher.
Yeah, to the teacher. Like, they're in some sort of like literature or creative writing class and stuff like that. And the assignment is just to write something true about yourself, like, this is me. And of course, the temptation to really tell the truth about herself is too great. So she finally does it. But she doesn't want to actually hand it in. She just shows it to Frank because she likes it. But Frank is so sort of now it's different how people view this. Frank, I think, is just blown away by the talent and the imagination. I think he just thinks it's awesome. So he shows it to the prof. It's like, you need to see this, because he thinks it's like a great, work of fiction. Now, when the prof sees it, he has a really odd reaction. I can't see this happening in real life. I mean, yes, they're saying this girl must be really troubled because the assignment was to write for yourself, and she's making up all this bullshit. Okay, sure, I guess. But to the point that they actually send people to the house and say they're going to get child services, that seems like a huge reach. Just because she wrote a piece of fiction, or what they perceive as a piece of fiction, and she's saying it's true, that's enough for them to think that there must be something wrong with her upbringing and home situation, and she needs to be forcibly removed. I found that really odd. Because they're coming to the house, and then, when they're starting to get the brush off from Claire, it's like, well, then I'll be back with the authorities. Like, for what? What real grounds do you have that this girl is in a bad situation? Actually, once you get into the house, you see she's in a bad situation. You see it's a fucking brothel. But they didn't know that going in. They went all because she wrote a story. She
went to the authorities after she found the other teacher dead. Clara killed him.
Yeah, no, before that, the teacher they killed himself, he showed up at the house.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The prof named Kevin. This is before she came. Yeah, she came with the authority because she'd been killed, yes. But no, he himself showed up and said all this. Said that they would get the authorities involved and blah, 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 and take her out of there. I'm thinking, just because you read a story and that was supposed to be true. I just think that's, I don't know. That's going above and beyond as your job as like a prof, if you ask me. I mean, you can sit them
I mean,
down
just
and have
like
a
you're on
private.
social.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can sit them down and have a private talk and be like, well, what does this mean? But even if they're just like, yeah, that's the truth, that's what I am. Do you really get that involved? The only thing is, I guess she's 17, so she's a minor. So, I mean, I don't know. It just seems odd. I mean, I guess they had to get a way of getting him to snoop around so he could get killed off and all this stuff. Fine. It seems like a bit of a reach to me. It's not a huge problem. I don't, it didn't, ruin the movie for me or anything like that. But yeah, it was great when she started writing that stuff because I love the flashback scenes, the soldiers and the beach and the brothel and all that. It's really good. It reminds me of like Les Miserables because it's like the same time period. It's not France, but it's similar.
Is it not France? Where is it? Is it in England?
Yeah, this is somewhere in the English coast.
Okay.
It might be like north. I'm guessing it's probably somewhere in the mid to northern England because they talked specifically about that battalion of soldiers being sent to put down an uprising in Ireland. So it seems to suggest geographically it's not too far from Ireland. Although you never know. Sometimes they just get moved around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what a lot of people, again, not to go too much into history, but the whole thing about the Napoleonic Wars is the Napoleonic Wars were kind of fought all over the place. So you did have soldiers stationed here and there and that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, so these would have been English soldiers fighting against, various forces besides the French.
The biggest criticism I've seen of this film is it's kind of like it's just disjointed and it's hard to follow, but I don't really think that's true at all. Yeah, it's
because as I said, I get how sometimes when you have movies that jump back and forth between time periods, that can get confusing. But I think they did a really good job of making it not confusing, especially considering they have her like narrating every time you get like to the start of it because it's like part of the journal. So the narration doesn't seem like clunky and sometimes narrations don't seem like they're necessary. This seems organic to me that there's narration because it's like from something she's written down. So I thought that was handled really well. So I would disagree with that. I don't find it disjointed. I think it flows really well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it plays really well. That it right around the climax, you actually get to see what happened. The entire story reveals itself. So I think it's done really well like that. I don't think it's hard to follow at all.
No, I was never confused. I mean, obviously, just like because this is how good fiction works, early in the movie, there are things going on that you don't fully grasp the meaning of. But the whole point is, by the time, it unravels, you do. I mean, that's just how good storytelling goes. Sometimes you have to be patient with it. One of my favorite movies that does this is, and I always bring it up when you talk about gangster movies because I always want to say, well, I like The Godfather, but what I like is Once Upon a Time in America. If you remember Once Upon a Time in America, the whole first half hour of that movie, half hour, stuff is happening and going on and people are doing things, but there's not really any context for any of it. You have no idea really who they are or why they're doing what they're doing. It's only through watching sort of the rest of the movie that the beginning part makes sense. So sometimes you just have to be patient. But this movie's not even that bad. It's not like it has this huge whole chunk where you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever you have a story...
That's weird. I didn't know it had that criticism, but that's a...
Yeah, I think whenever you have a story that's non-linear, a certain percentage of people are going to have a hard time following.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, it's true that sometimes non-linear storytelling is just more gimmicky. There's not really any reason for doing it. It's kind of like what we said about how they couldn't come up with something different to do in Let Me In, so they just have that whole start in the middle and flashback, and it added nothing. And after he's hardly the first person to do it, but Quentin Tarantino, of course, the whole thing in friggin' Pulp Fiction is jumping around, stuff like that. I think that became very on vogue for a few years. People just sort of copying it. But this movie, it's not doing it a whole bunch. It's just going from one time period to another and back. It's not it's not hopping all over the place. It's just two narratives and showing how they connect.
Sure.
But No, yeah, and I just like the flashback a lot and how it reveals what kind of vampires they are, what their origins are. I love the island idea. The island idea is good, and part of me says, and well, part of me wants to say, oh, I wish there was even more island stuff, but no, I don't, because then that would be too much. Keep it like mysterious and stuff like that. Like there's just this island has nothing on it, then suddenly you go up this part. But I wonder where they shot. It's a pretty cool island, and it has like this series of like cascading small waterfalls. And then you've just got this weird, primitive looking hut. And that's where you go in, and that's where you stand in the dark and make your bargain or whatever, or sacrifice to be turned. And when that happens, suddenly all the water in the waterfalls turns to blood, which is a pretty nice touch, pretty cool. Definitely one of the more memorable images from the movie. Probably the most memorable image from the movie, I would say. But, good. A good-looking movie, good cinematography and stuff. Really captures the feel of the coast in 2 different time periods, which I like. Like you watch the movie, you almost feels a little damp watching the movie. They're right on the water there. You can almost sort of feel the pervasive dampness, the water in the air or whatever.
Yeah, I could see the contrast when they went to the island. It was much more vibrant. The colors.
Mm-hmm. One thing like I didn't catch on to until like way after that I'm kind of stupid about was that Eleanor's gimmick is that she doesn't want to just kill anybody, and that she tries to give it to people that are ready for death anyway. Like I was kind of too stupid to realize that Frank was sort of part of that, and that he was fighting leukemia. But at first when his mother said it, she made it sound like he was doing better. So I don't know. But then he got to a point where he was just saying, I'm going to die anyway. And then you have that point where it's just like, oh, like, what does he even expect at this point? Does he expect her to bite him? Because that's not actually how it works, But then she does feed off him just for the hell of it to cement their bond just a little bit. She bites his wrist, remember? Or she punctures his wrist and then takes a little blood. Did she explain to him, now this won't actually turn you. This is just going to make you feel really bad.
Yeah.
Because what I have to do is take you out to this island and do a whole thing. Like, I guess there had to be a point. I mean, I get why they wouldn't put that on the screen, but there had to be a point where she would actually have to explain it to him.
All right, bear with me. Look, we need to go out to this island.
Yeah, I'd be like, aren't you just going to bite me? And I have some wooziness, and then I become an awesome vampire? She's like, well, no, actually. But I will bite you since you're offering.
I do need a snack. But your blood tastes like shit because you have leukemia.
And that's the other thing. Like, sometimes that's the other thing about how in-depth I get in vampire fiction is one of the things that, like, the nerdy, really ultra detail-oriented person that I am about this stuff thinks is, like, is that really good for her? All she's ever feeds off is old, dying people.
I know.
Like, that's not good blood. Like, I've read and seen enough vampire stuff where, like, they specifically point out, like, they only do that if they have to. That they much prefer a young, healthy person. Like, that's the best stuff, And yet she seems to be doing fine, just going off the sick and old the whole time. But, again, this movie has its own rules about these things.
Yeah. It seems like it would almost make her sick if she... Because, I mean, leukemia is blood cancer, right?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't go that far because I think the whole point of the gift of being a vampire is like remember her mother, when she got the gift, she was dying of like tuberculosis and stuff like, and the other soldier, he was dying of pneumonia or whatever the hell he had and stuff. The whole thing is like, once you get this gift, you're immune to like human diseases and stuff. Like, you don't worry about that. Just like you don't age, you don't get viruses or things like that. And so, but I just always did think that even though that was true, or that was a factor, that was a real thing with vampires, I did also think though that there's still like maybe blood couldn't be bad for them, but some blood was better than others. Like, I just always thought like this blood wouldn't be good. Like, maybe it wouldn't be harmful, but it just wouldn't be good enough. Like, she would need good, strong blood from young, strong, healthy people. But I don't know. It's just a minor quibble, I guess. But it's the type of thing somebody like me thinks of because, as I said, I'm so detail-oriented when it comes to vampires and stuff.
Well, it's why you don't eat old animals. Like, it's why you don't let them, like, hang out for years and years and then eat them because it's all tough and stuff.
Yeah, their organs have all failed.
Let's let them live long, healthy lives, and then we'll devour their flesh.
Yeah. Oh, okay. The guy they owned the hotel's name was Noel. I forgot that, but that was poor Noel. He's the character I feel the most sorry for. Even though the whole point is these women, because it's an interesting perspective the movie gives us, because we have our two main characters are women. They are vampires, but a lot of the whole point of the plot is that how they're still very much victims of like a male-dominated world, especially when you find out exactly how vampires work in this world, where there's not even supposed to be female vampires. There's a brotherhood. So you just have them going from situation to situation, just barely sort of getting by. And as we said, it's 200 years later, and her mom is still basically being a hooker because that's the only thing she knows how to do. Is either be a hooker or find other girls and make them be hookers.
Uh-huh.
But it's like stick with what you know, I guess.
Yeah,
with Claire. But Claire is played by as we said, Gemma. Gemma Atherton, and she's very attractive in this movie, and she spends most of the time, all whored up. She's always wearing like her tight pants and her bustiers that push her tits up and stuff like that. Like she's some pretty good eye candy in the movie.
She's probably most famous for Quantum of Solace.
Oh, I didn't even know that was her.
Mm-hmm. I believe it was that one. One of those new Daniel Craig Bond movies.
That's such a forget. If it was Quantum of Solace, no wonder, because that's like the worst one, if you ask me. I can't stand Quantum of Solace. It doesn't even feel like a Bond movie. I was just, not to get on to Bond again, but like I was one of the people that was really thrilled with Casino Royale. I was like, this was really good, and I was really happy. And then like I was all set for Quantum of Solace, and Quantum of Solace was just bad. It was bland and crappy, and it felt more like a Jason Bourne movie, but not even as good as those. Like I did not like it.
Yeah,
so it's highly possible she's in that, and I just totally forgot.
Gemma. It's got to be Gemma, right?
Yeah, I guess Gemma. Yeah. She's in, you're right. Quantum Solace, Strawberry Fields. Yeah. It's too bad. Yeah, she might be well known for being one of the most forgettable Bond films of recent years.
Still a Bond girl. You can't take that away from her.
That's true. And certainly not the worst.
She has a very unique look to her, also because she has freckles, which is kind of a thing you don't see. It's kind of frowned upon.
Yeah. She's actually younger than I thought. Maybe for the purposes of this movie, they tried to make her a bit older, because this is a few years ago, because, she only would have been about,
25 or something?
26 or something, when she did this movie, and she looked over 30 to me, but maybe they were, trying to make that choice, because, although, again, it's a little muddy, because the whole point is they can pose as sisters, because of the way the age things go, because she was a young woman when she had her, and then she was turned. She was turned for years, and while her daughter grew up somewhat, and then when her daughter became 16 or whatever, she turned her. There's in real life, there's 8 years between the actresses. She's only 8 years older.
Kind of crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
I
mean, there's some. For the purposes of the movie, it makes perfect sense. But there's movies where speaking of terrible, forgettable movies that I saw in the theater, Alexander is an awful, terrible movie that I so regret seeing. And in that film, Angelina Jolie plays Colin Farrell's mom. And she was, 3 years older than him or something?
I thought he would have been older than her. He's 48. I don't know how old she is.
She was older than him, but barely.
I only know that because I recently saw The Beguiled. He's exactly that much older, to the day, than Clint Eastwood. He's exactly twice Clint Eastwood's age. Wait, that can't be right.
But Saoirse herself isn't a particularly a pretty, she's fine looking, but she's not really pretty. But she has very striking eyes, which I'm sure you've noticed in the movie. She's got very blue eyes, put my own blue eyes to shame, and that they're very, very striking and stuff. And there's a lot of, and they make good use of it. Pretty much any movie she's in makes good use of it. It's the first thing I noticed about her in Brooklyn. Yeah, she's only 23.
She's normally a blonde, I think.
Yeah. and that's how she is in Brooklyn.
She was in the film, I believe it's called Hannah. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, she was Hannah. That's probably the first thing I saw her in.
Me too. It's a really good movie.
Okay, I saw her in Atonement, but she's not really a main. Well, she's kind of a main character in Atonement in that her character. Well, if you know the story of Atonement, her character, while doesn't get a lot of scenes, her actions are what fuel the whole thing. Like, so, kind of important in that. So she's only like 13 for that. But yeah, I like Hannah a lot. So that's pretty cool. And it's funny, they make her look really weird for the Grand Budapest Hotel. Like, she doesn't look like herself in that movie to me.
I don't remember what she looked like.
I don't know if it's like makeup effects or whatever, but well, they make her look more like sort of like gawky. I don't know if that's a word. They make her look less attractive. Like, again, she's not super pretty, but you know, she's a good-looking girl. It seems like they made a point to try to tone that down some in Grand Budapest. They try to make, like I said, gawky, maybe, I don't know, less attractive. I don't know how they did it exactly, if it was makeup or what, but yeah. But the first time I saw her, you know, took note of her was only about a year or so ago when I saw her, or a couple of years ago when I saw Brooklyn, because that was, you know, she was the main character. Although she was the main character in Hannah, you know, that just didn't register with me at the time. I didn't think anything about it. But anyway, she's a good actress, and there's some interesting stuff coming up.
Yeah. She's going to be a big-time actress.
Yeah, for sure. I know that the next thing she's in is, I can't remember what it's called, but it's based on one of Chekhov's plays. I think actually this was based on was this a play?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to look up the title.
Yeah, it's like I think it's just like a vampire story or something like that. It's real generic.
Yeah, I think that's the exact title, A Vampire Story. Oh, another allusion too is when Claire first meets Noel, she says her name is Carmilla. So that's another very old, well-known. That's like my favorite vampire story from back in the day, Carmilla. Another 19th century one that predates Dracula. Lesbian vampire too, which is pretty cool. For the day.
That's always cool.
Yeah. Since I didn't know the plot of this when I first saw it, and I saw there were two of them, I was like, "Is this lesbian stuff?" But no, it's mother-daughter stuff. I'm trying to think. Just thinking about comparing it to other vampire films and stuff. Like, as I said, I think it has a few elements in common with something like Interview with the Vampire, in that we have like sort of somebody revealing the story of their life over a certain amount of time, and some flashbacks and stuff. And just a few things sort of about the, you know, societal stuff, people's place in society, and blah blah blah. But I don't know. I'll always prefer this quite a bit. I don't know. I just have a real aversion to that story anyway, and seeing it as a movie didn't improve that any. It just sort of annoyed me, seeing Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt flounce around.
Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely see some similarities between this film and Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah, it's been so long since I saw it, I'm forgetting a lot. But like I said, I guess the main thing I can think of is that both sort of have like flashbacks and people sort of talking about the story of their life and stuff. Because that's what it is. It's Interview with the Vampire, so he's telling the story. Whereas in this, you know, Eleanor wants to tell her story and finally does. The whole thing is like, for so long, she's so tired of lying. And that's one of the big contrasts between her and her mother. Her mother's super happy and used to lying. She lies everywhere. She lied to Noel. Like, she lies all the time and she doesn't care. But it really actually bothers Eleanor. She doesn't like doing it. And she just really wants to tell somebody the truth. And at first, she can just, throw it away. But then when she meets Frank, she thinks there's somebody she can really tell the truth to. And that's, something that makes her really happy.
I mean, when you get down to it, I mean, Ella really does a lot of stupid things because, I mean, she really kind of acts like a spoiled brat because, I mean, the mom is doing it, for her benefit, to, make the money and keep them hidden and not, tell secrets and all this stuff.
But it's also
blabs.
But it's also because she doesn't know the whole story because her mother hasn't told her everything.
Right.
She doesn't actually know they're being actively hunted, for one thing. And as she said, there's a part where he said, well, what did your mother do in that period between? It's like, she never told me. So there was all sorts of stuff that her mother, so her mother's keeping her safe from stuff, but she's not telling her what it is. So you can understand why she sort of chafes under that, because she doesn't really actually understand what her mother says. For all she knows, it's made up and stuff. So I don't come down too hard on her for that. And the other thing is, how long, she's not actually a teenager. She's quite old. And that's the other thing that happens at the end of the movie is, children have to grow up and go on their own. And that's what finally happens here, even though it took much longer than usual, is that, and her mother does make that realization herself. And because when she decides to go off with the soldier guy, who basically looks like, especially when he's in his soldier outfit, he looks like Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance, when he would wear that when they did the Black Parade stuff. That's all I could think of. I was just like, wow, this looks like Welcome to the Black Parade. He has the exact same haircut, and he's clean shaven, and he's got the soldier suit up, 19th century style suit on. I was just like, it's My Chemical Romance. But no. But anyway, when she goes off with him, she says to her, you're not coming with us. You can go ahead and make your own life. Which is what she chooses to do, and she does with that's how the movie ends, with her taking Frank. Doesn't seem like the right name for him. He didn't look like a Frank.
It doesn't, yeah.
Anyway, taking Frank to the island and turning him, and you can see he's really wasting away in the boat. So it's she's definitely doing a good thing because he's gonna die. It's not like she's just stealing his humanity from him. It's it's take his humanity or he's dead now. So it makes a little more sense, because sometimes when people get turned, it's sort of why would you just want to do that? But with him, you kind of get it. And then she even explains to him, she's like, I'm not giving you something, I'm taking something away, is what she says, which is pretty good. And she says about how you won't have this and you won't have that, and he said, but I'll have you, which is nice. Pretty decent.
Yeah, you won't have a soul. Hope you don't miss your soul.
You have a soulmate, but you don't have a soul.
But that being said, Ella does seem like she is compassionate and
Mm-hmm.
is not just a bloodthirsty monster.
Yeah. Although once again they're kind of on the run. Although at least now they split up, because once again they've killed probably a high-ranking member of the Brotherhood. But they've got better odds now because they're split up, and also because she's with one of them. Obviously he can help her and do things that she couldn't do on her own. So.
So do you think that he was in love with her the whole time?
I don't know, but I think he was definitely fascinated by her, and he was fascinated by her and came to really respect her, which I guess turned into that. I mean, when you think about it, he was kind of an idiot at the start, because even though she told her not to go with the captain, he could have done a little more.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh no, don't go. He knows what the captain's going to do to her, and then he doesn't help her out of that situation. The whole thing was after he got turned, he was going to give the gift to the captain, and then they were just going to leave. But then when he found out that she killed the captain and took it, he was like, okay. But then he did say, after he'd killed the other guy at the end of the movie, and he said he'd actually watched her for a long time, and he
right.
And as he said, I think there's a certain honor to the way you do this, which is funny because it's more her daughter than her, because he's talking about killing people that only ask for it in control. He's like, I'd like to try to live that way, and she tries to play it off cool. She's like, doesn't matter how you live. It's like, well, can't I hang out with you for a while or something like that? And she's like, I don't know, in time. He's like, well, we've got time. Very true. We've got time.
And when he comes back from the island, he talks about how he took all of the other guy's stuff, like all of his land and everything else. And she's like, well, but, he's not going to miss it or something like that. Something really like, he's dead. It doesn't matter type remark.
Yeah. I guess that's the main thing that her character's about. It's like pragmatism and being a survivor.
Yeah.
Even before she turned, that's how she managed to turn, when she saw her chance and she took it and stuff. And then and that's why, like, even though she seems really ruthless and mean and bad about sorts of things, it is all to help protect her daughter and, the maternal instinct, blah, blah, blah. So a more or less honorable character, even if she does dishonorable things, usually. But again, she can be pretty damn callous about it in certain things. She was completely compared. I mean, the whole action towards the end is she wants to go murder Frank. So she obviously, when events play out as they do, she's content. She sees sort of the error of her ways and content to let her daughter go and be with Frank. But if that hadn't happened, if she gotten there first, she would have murdered Frank herself. And she, again, had callously killed Noel, who was kind to both of them, and she killed the school administrator and the prof, who were both only really looking out for the welfare of this student. They weren't like overly well, maybe they were overly nosy, but because that was one of the things I said. But I think that was overly nosy for the point of the plot, as I said. Like, I didn't really get how just reading her story and her saying it's true is just going to make them say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to send child services after." I don't know about that, but anyway, it's not a big deal.
I mean, it's kind of like these days when a kid does maybe casually mention something about harming themselves.
Right.
You need to,
There's that episode
the authorities
of King of the Hill from back in the day where Connie passes a note to Bobby and it says, "I'm so bored I could kill myself." And the teacher gets it and goes, "Ah," and sends to the principal's office and then calls in the guidance counselor and then calls in both sets of parents and stuff like that. And, she was just saying an expression, but they all took it super seriously. And then, the kids were very smart, because they knew that they didn't approve of the relationship, and she used it to manipulate them into keeping them together. Like, she'll kill herself if she's not with Bobby. I mean, that's from like 1998 or something. So yeah, it's true.
King of the Hill was pretty progressive.
It was. It still had a few episodes that bothered me with its message, but for the most part,
where Hank kept using the N-word the entire episode, that was pretty rough.
No, the one I hate the most, of course, is the Canadian one, because instead of Hank learning some sort of lesson about his xenophobia, they just make the Canadian guy a complete douche.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the whole thing is like Boomhauer does some sort of like house swap thing that you can do, where he goes to live in Canada for a while, and this Canadian family comes and lives in his house, and the whole thing is Hank is like, I don't like this foreigner, and I don't like his ways and their ways and stuff, and the family's normal, but the guy himself, the father, is just an ass, and all he does is like talk down to them. He talk about like the pollution and how the air is better and the beer is better, and he winds up getting like arrested, and Hank has to bail him out. Like they just make him like a complete asshole, like no integrity character, and all it does is prove everything Hank thought right. It's just like, this is stupid foreigner, like what an idiot. We're definitely like. So I really hate that episode. That's the episode I hate the most, because Hank doesn't learn any lesson. All he does is get his xenophobia completely, validated, and at the expense of this Canadian being just a jackass. Like, he's just like,
well, aren't Connie's parents like Laotian?
Yeah.
And so he's like, and he's kind of an asshole too. The dad is. So.
Yeah, he's a complete asshole. He's my favorite character on the show, Con. Con's my favorite character in the entire show. I love him. Because he calls it as he sees it. He's always calling them stupid rednecks and stuff, which is pretty funny. But yeah, that's the episode that bothers me the most. Another couple episodes that bother me a little, but aren't as much, as like the one where Bobby gets into like playing like a game that's like Magic the Gathering, but like the kids he plays with aren't just like nerds; they're like the worst nerds possible. Because again, it's like, I don't want them hanging out with nerds, and it's like at one point it all ends with them. They think they're real wizards, and they want to make him drink dog blood for some sort of thing, and Hank rescues him from it. Because it's, again, like, thanks a lot, King of the Hill. Like, it makes, like, anybody that's into these games just like a total outcast of society freak that wants to, like, cast spells and drink dog blood. What really makes me sad about that is one of my favorite comedians is the main guy in that, who does the voice. It's David Cross. David Cross plays the guy. There's at least a few others, but they're not worth mentioning. But yeah, so no, I do like King of the Hill. I think it's a good show. I mean, the strength of the show for me was always here's Hank Hill, a character who's super xenophobic and right wing, and would have all these views and opinions that I would totally disagree with, but I still find him a likable character. That's what I think is sort of the strength of the show. Like he has all this stuff that I totally don't like or agree with, but I still get his point of view on some of it. I sympathize with him in certain ways, so I think that's the strength of the show. It was a good show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know that I've seen, but just a few episodes or maybe a season or two.
Yeah. But it had some really good, as we said, it had some really good, almost before its time episodes of like sort of pointing out like things of like, how, stuff like political correctness gone amok and stuff like that. Like actually one of the very early episodes from, I don't think the first 2 seasons were that good, but then it gets better, is like the whole thing where like, some like crazy woman in their neighborhood tries to ban Halloween because she thinks it's for Satanists and stuff like that, And Hank defends Halloween.
Go get your propane for Halloween.
Propane and propane accessories. What's funny though is like the other day, like in the lead up to the Super Bowl, Orc said something about like Tom Landry. The only reason I know who Tom Landry is because of King of the Hill. I would have no clue who Tom Landry is. I would have no clue who was somebody else that was in there. But anyway, there's at least 4 or 5 like prominent football players that have been mentioned over time through King of the Hill. I would never have any idea who they were if not for King of the Hill. Yeah, they go to like Tom Landry Middle School, for God's sakes, which is made up, but still pretty funny, just to show like it's football country. I get it, yeah.
Yeah, he was like famously a coach.
Yes, there were some players too, and I'm like, oh, Troy Aikman. So I never ever would have heard of Troy.
Really?
Aikman,
oh, okay.
But he's like a recurring thing on King of the Hill. They often would reference him or bring him up, but no.
Well, yeah, because that takes place like around somewhere in Texas, right?
Yeah. It's a fictional place called Arlen, Texas.
So, yeah.
So it's very Texas.
Once upon a time, Troy Aikman was like God in Texas. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. And like I said, I knew that because of King of the Hill. So King of the Hill taught me things too.
Troy Aikman is now known for the guy who, like, as soon as he stepped out on field, he would get a concussion. Oh. So he had to retire because it just was nonstop concussions.
Yeah.
That film Concussion was probably like made about him.
Yeah. I never saw it. I have no desire to see it, but
oh no, Will Smith's in it. I don't have any desire to see it either. But he was robbed of the Oscar.
Will Smith in. I saw him in. Oh, here we can get into this. Right. No, we don't have to get into it. But Bright, man, I watched maybe 30. I mean, I got fairly far. Maybe
you didn't finish it though. I mean,
maybe 35, 40 minutes. Just everything irritated me. Like every scene bothered me. Every scene.
Well, you want me to spoil some of it for you?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Well, because okay, turn this off if you care about Bright.
Right, okay.
So it comes to find out that Will Smith is actually a person that can use the wand. I forget whatever word they use for it.
Yeah, they have a lot of words for stuff.
So he's able to use the wand at the end. He saves them at the end.
But yeah, I mean, I don't even know what like the main plot they were getting into was, to tell you the truth. Like I saw stuff they were doing, but I turned it off before I actually saw where it was heading. Like whatever, like the big overall, overarching plot they were getting to. Like I don't actually really know what was going on there. But no, I was just really annoyed. I didn't buy the world. I hated everything the characters said to each other.
What were the pointy-eared people called? Elves?
Yeah, those are just elves.
So some of those were...
The elves were like the upper class. They were like kind of rich.
Bright's the word for it. Okay, yeah.
Okay,
Some of the elves were brights that you had to practice and learn how to use the wand, and you could become a bright.
Okay.
And whoever had the wand, could do virtually anything they wanted. So whoever had the wand, you really had to make sure that they were somewhat responsible with it. So the wand got loose, and they were all trying to track the wand down. So that was pretty much the premise.
Yeah.
And everyone wants it, including like a bunch of Mexican gangsters.
See, here's the other thing. Like, I know you liked End of Watch. I hated End of Watch. And this just reminded me of End of Watch with a bunch of fantasy garbage thrown in. And Will Smith for good measure.
Yeah. Well, Max Landis wrote this for David Ayers to direct.
Yeah.
Because he wanted it similar to End of Watch.
Yeah, obviously.
Well, sure, I can see if you didn't like End of Watch, you wouldn't like this either. Which I should have known that. I don't think I really recommended this to you, but
no, you didn't at all. You just said that you liked it, and I already knew. But like as I said, I try not to judge directors and stuff. But now that I've seen a fair amount of his body of work, and I like. What do I like? He did something I like.
Did you like Suicide Squad?
No, I did not like Suicide Squad.
He did a film with Christian Bale that I thought was really good.
See, yeah, that's Harsh Times.
Yeah.
The only way I can enjoy that is to not take it seriously. View it as a comedy, and it's great. Don't take it seriously at all. Because, okay, I'll just very quickly say my problem with David Ayer. Okay, so there are movies that are, not real world, and that's obvious. It's like a sci-fi movie, or it's a fantasy movie, right? They're not real world. They have things that don't happen in the real world. But then you have movies that are set in basically the real world, but they have kind of like a hyper reality. Magic realism is probably the best word, that brought in ever since what Salman Rushdie did. Magic realism, which is, it's real world, but just something's a little brighter, a little more off, a little more dramatic and stuff. And they're used to different ways. For instance, Quentin Tarantino basically uses magic realism. It's a real world, but stuff is more stylized and stuff is more amped up. And you don't have to use it that way. You can use it in a whimsical way. That's what like Wes Anderson does. Wes Anderson's movies are all real world, but they're a little more whimsical. They're a little more heightened and stuff like that. I feel like David Ayer wants to do that, but can't. I feel like David Ayer is trying super hard to give us gritty, realistic stuff, but with that touch of heightened reality, and it doesn't work for me. It just falls on its face. It just feels, I don't know, bad, wrong. And that's, I even get that in Training Day. Like, that's how I feel watching Training Day. I'm just like, no. Like, everything is too contrived. Like, this wouldn't happen. That wouldn't happen. No way that would happen. It's just too much piled upon too much. So, yeah, no, I actually don't like anything he's done that I've seen. There's a couple movies I haven't seen. I haven't seen Fury. And I haven't seen Street Kings, if that's an important movie of his. I don't know if it is.
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
It's important.
So I haven't seen those.
Those are both good.
I've seen the rest. I don't really remember U571, but U571 is more like, it could have been anybody. It doesn't really have his stamp on it, really. I'm David, who's in that? John Bon Jovi's in that for some reason.
Oh, wow.
But I'm looking at here like Training Day, Fast and the Furious, Harsh Times, End of Watch, Sabotage, Suicide Squad, and now
Sabotage is awesome.
Again, I hate Sabotage, man.
I know.
Every character is such a piece of shit. Like I know that Rambo Rat feels the same way. I can remember him riffing on this movie, and it's the same thing. Like, if every single character is a piece of shit, like, why are you watching? Like, why do you care what happens to any of them? They're just a bunch of unlikable assholes that do horrible things and bad things happen. And
sure.
No, I hate that movie. That's like the worst movie Arnold has done in recent, when his like second phase or third phase or whatever we want to call it. Like, I'd rather watch that movie he did with Johnny.
Oh, Collateral. No, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'd rather watch that movie like 100 times than watch Sabotage once.
Yeah, I like both of those films.
Because that movie's not good, but there's nothing about it that like pisses me off or anything. Johnny Knoxville, who also did several different guest spots on King of the Hill.
Full circle.
Yeah. He voiced two different characters. I can't remember the first character was, but he eventually wound up voicing Luann's, for many seasons, reference but never seen father. The father that they lied to her and said was on the oil rig when actually he was in prison.
Luann was the late Brittany Murphy, right?
Yeah. I think the show ended because of that. I think that's the only reason the show ended, because she died,
Really?
and they didn't want, and I don't think they wanted to continue without her. The show was really successful and did a bunch of seasons. I'm pretty sure that's the only reason they didn't continue. They thought it would be wrong to go on without her. Plus, it had a pretty good run. But yeah, I was thinking about Brittany Murphy the other day because I saw her again. I saw that middle. I was watching the middle section of Sin City that she's in. She's like the worst part of it.
Yeah, I agree.
She's so terrible.
I agree.
I realize that she's not getting good dialogue to work with in that anyway, but she's like, "You fool, get down, fool." So bad. But yeah, it kind of bums you out to think that, like, by the time the second Sin City came out, like, two of the actors in it had died, her and Michael Clark Duncan.
Oh shit! Yeah, someone else played his part, didn't they?
Yeah, they did recast.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess he was more or less. I mean, the role didn't call for much. I mean, big, huge, scary black guy. Okay, yeah. I realize there's others besides Michael Clark Duncan, but still, Michael Clark Duncan had some talent. He did.
What'd you think of that movie?
Sin City 2?
Yeah.
Huge disappointment, man. I mean, I was pretty much prepared for it. Too much time had passed. And the other thing was, all the best stuff was already kind of in the first one. There wasn't really anything good they could put in this one. Like, I'm trying to think of the stories. Like, yeah, they gave us more Marv, but it kind of seemed pointless. No. And, yeah, just, they let too much time pass. I mean, that movie did well. It came out in 2004. Like, why didn't the next movie come out in, like, 2006 or 2007? Like, what the hell?
I don't know that it did particularly well.
Yeah, I get that a lot of people probably wouldn't have gotten it. I mean, I was literally with people that, like, didn't get it at all, that, like, laughed at it.
That movie, like, opened me up to a lot of graphic novels I hadn't seen before, or I hadn't read before. Yeah. I was kind of not into it at the time, and there was a lot of stuff.
Frank Miller's kind of a one-note guy, but he does that one note so well that I don't care. You know, like, I don't think he's the most versatile guy. He kind of does, like, one thing, but he does it really well.
I liked his Punisher a lot.
Yeah. But nowadays, you can see how his stuff wouldn't fly because it's all, you know, misogynistic, hard-boiled stuff.
Isn't he, like, really racist or something, too? Like, he's got a lot of flack lately.
Maybe. I didn't know that. It's possible. I could believe it. But, I mean...
I could be wrong, but...
misogyny is definitely the big thing.
Yeah, but, I mean, that's...
Even though, again, I think if he's just being deliberate about it, I mean, I could write something misogynistic. It doesn't make me misogynistic, you know? Like, it'd be like, yes, this is going to be a misogynistic work. That doesn't mean you're approving of it. It's just, no, this is the spirit of what this is. But, again, we live in a world where people can't separate anything, right?
Right.
It's like, if you write something, that's entirely what you believe in and approve of and want to be in the real world or something, you know?
What's the movie he directed? The Spirit? Have you seen that one?
Which is one of the most unwatchable pieces of shit you'll ever see. Unwatchable.
See, that makes A Dame to Kill For a lot more desirable, huh?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, the racism he caught was, like, anti-Islamic. He had this idea, Holy Terror. It was all supposed to be about, like, fighting against, like, Islam terrorists and stuff like that. And I've heard he said some stuff. There's been some stuff about homophobia too. I haven't personally seen it, but
I mean, there is some of that in some of his work,
but again, you know, I guess it depends on how it's presented, right? Like, we all know, like, you read, like, the Stephen King novel and characters are calling people faggots. That doesn't mean Stephen King thinks that.
Right.
You know, so I don't really know. So, I mean, I guess you'd have to see how it's presented. Because, yes, it is possible to write a work that presents material in such a way that does, where you can criticize it for that. No, I just don't know. Everybody really likes this third part of the Batman thing that I still haven't read because I'm cheap. You know, there's Batman and The Dark Knight Returns, and then The Dark Knight Strikes Again, and now just recently the new one has come out, whatever the hell it's called. But I don't know why I can't remember, but we're getting a lot of praise. I hate the way they're releasing it. Like every comic is like a little thin hardcover instead of just like a comic. Like how expensive, man. Every freaking comic.
I read his RoboCop not too long ago.
Oh, I haven't read that. He's in RoboCop really cool. Too, you know. Did you know that?
Huh.
He gets blown up in a drug lab in RoboCop too. He even plays somebody named Frank. I think they call him like Frank the cooker or Frank the chemist or something.
I'll have to pay attention to that.
But yeah.
I like RoboCop too, even though I wish they'd gone with his script.
I like RoboCop 2 too, even though it's silly.
Yeah.
It still has some really cool, good scenes in it. He's also makes an appearance in The Dame to Kill For, but I don't remember that. Somebody that gets shot. Legal issues. Oh, whatever.
Did you watch that the Cloverfield Paradox movie?
No interest.
You're not going to watch that?
I've never seen the first one. I thought the second one was a lie, like it was a trick, and I have no interest in this one. No, not going to do that. I'm not going to say it's bad because I just mean it's not something that I care about. I know that like the second it appeared on Netflix, everybody watched it, but no. Actually, what just showed up on Netflix? Oh yeah, the live action Ghost in the Shell's on Netflix now. So,
oh, is it? Okay.
At least it's on mine. And so I'm sure it'll make me mad, but I know that they do kind of faithfully recreate a few of the action sequences. So I'm kind of curious just to see how they look, you know?
Well, I mean, this stuff keeps flopping, so maybe they'll stop doing it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it was a very small, like this is way past the window anyway. There was a very small window from about 99 to 2003, 2004, where like manga and anime was sort of like a hip thing to like adapt or bring over or try. And then it just flamed out, which I don't mind because they couldn't do it right anyway.
Yeah, I think like the Dragon Ball Z was really popular at one point.
Oh, sure. Super popular show.
Still is to an extent, but I remember like in the early 2000s, it was like almost a household name.
You want to talk about a show with filler? Man, no show has more filler than that. There's almost 300 episodes of that. You could probably say like 40, maybe even 50 are completely useless and don't move the plot forward. And then you can take every episode where stuff that actually matters happens, and it's only really a few minutes because most of it is just guys standing around charging. Like they go, ah, and they start to glow, and like there's like 10 minutes of it before anybody actually starts to fight. Like I do like Dragon Ball Z; it has a certain charm and stuff like that. But I mean, all it is a series of fights with a bunch of filler in between. That's literally all it is. The original Dragon Ball series was a lot better when Goku was a kid because it was an adventure show. It was episodic. They went on and like there was an actual quest, an ongoing quest to collect the Dragon Balls, and different stuff happened. Right. In Dragon Ball Z, it's just like these guys have showed up and they're really strong. Oh, we managed to beat them. Now these guys have showed up and they're even more strong. Luckily, we managed to beat them. You know, the whole thing about the power levels is just insane. Yeah. Like the very first arc of Dragon Ball is about how like Raditz comes and his power level is so crazy nobody can imagine it. Then like only a couple arcs later, like Raditz would have been like they could have like done that and killed him. You know, like they just keep upping it to a ridiculous extent. But yeah, Dragon Ball Z was interesting, particularly from a Canadian standpoint, because there were 2 dubs of it, including one with Canadian voice actors that was slightly different. So I used to sort of see both versions at the same time. It was kind of interesting. What's funny is like if you look for it now, the Canadian ones are the ones you find, and those are the ones that are on the DVDs, as far as I know. Although they've done different DVD sets, like there's one that like supposedly cuts out the filler. I don't know. I have no desire to own it, but I do like it. Every once in a while, I'll watch some of the arcs on online.
Yeah, I gave up. It was too many episodes.
But yeah.
I mean, I probably watched half of it.
But in the late 90s, yeah, Dragon Ball Z for boys and Sailor Moon for girls, they were the big ones that came over. I mean, there were so many others, but these were the ones that came over. These were the ones that the American audience was introduced to.
Yeah,
I mean,
Cowboy Bebop.
yeah, see, that never aired anywhere that I could watch. That never ever came on the channel I had ever.
It was what do they call it?
We never had Adult Swim. If that's
Adult Swim. Yeah,
see, Adult Swim brought a lot of stuff. See, we never had Adult Swim.
That was what really opened up my eyes to it as a young adult.
Like I said, I mean, I was the right age for the boom, like around 97-ish. I was like 14. And then it also retroactively made me realize the stuff I watched even as a little kid was anime, and I just didn't know. Like, I didn't know I didn't really know Astro Boy was anime. I didn't know Voltron was anime, you know. I was just like, oh, shit, I love those stuff anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess I sort of did know, because even as a kid, I saw the credits. I saw the names, but, you know, I just wasn't really thinking of anime as, like, sort of a separate thing, right? I was just like, okay, these are cartoons from Japan. I didn't know anime was, like, a whole thing, you know. Then, like, yeah, I'm in, like, grade 7 or whatever, I'm 13, 14, they start airing episodes of Dragon Ball and Sailor Moon and stuff, and, yeah, the boom is starting. I'm just like, oh, this is a whole thing, and I love it, you know. But, yeah,
there's whole channels devoted just to anime these days. So it's I mean, it's pretty popular. I would say.
I mean, it's like a lot of things now. There's just so much of it. It's hard to sift through.
It is a lot. Yeah.
And the thing is, most anime just looks so good on the surface. Like, it could be a crap show, but it just looks awesome. So you're just like, this could be really good. And then you're watching, it's not really that good. But you're like, oh, this one looks really good. And that's how I feel when I see like new ones that show up on Netflix now. Like, anything for the last, like, 5 years, I don't know it. And I don't trust it. Like, I have no idea. I don't trust any of it.
You know, you've got something that's got, like, 30 episodes a season. You really hate to get invested and it not being, not be any good.
Yeah.
But, Netflix added a new one the other day I was going to try to watch. Which one was that?
An anime?
Yeah, I still need to watch that Godzilla that's on there.
Yeah, that's on my list. I'm going to watch that.
Oh, man. Got so many things that I need to watch that I'm probably not going to watch.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Oh, my eye.
Shit.
Yes. The Dark Knight 3, The Master Race. That's what it's called. The third one's called The Master Race. I don't even know the plot to it. I've done everything to avoid it. But it's gotten great reviews and stuff. Although I don't always trust that. Because actually, I think The Dark Knight Strikes Again sucks. I'm glad I have it, but it sucks, I think. It's too stupid and weird.
I've only read The Dark Knight, and I haven't.
Yeah. Well, Strikes Again is the one he did like in the early 90s, and it was a big deal because it was all the coloring was done with computer or something like that. I don't know, which was sort of a big deal at the time. I don't like it. It's too out there. You know, the girl that was Robin, now she's Catgirl and all this stuff, and he's bringing, I don't know. I don't like it very much. And it continues his tradition of his hatred for Robin. Like how much he hates like the real Robin. Like in this, like Dick Grayson, like literally becomes the Joker. Here, I'll tell. I might have said this before on air, but this is something that for many years my brain didn't put together. Even this is me, a person who is so good at dates. I know the date for everything, so of course I would know date for comics. Now, The Dark Knight Returns, everybody knows, came out in the big year, same as Watchmen, 1986. Burned into my brain. Always know that. And also burned into my brain is one of the bigger events in Batman's history was the death of Jason Todd, a death in the family. That was 1988. Always knew that. And yet, I, for many years, stupidly, when I would read The Dark Knight Returns, and they'd refer to Jason being dead, I was like, well, yeah, that's right, Jason's dead. Didn't occur to me till many years later that wasn't part of the continuity at the time. He just made that up. And then it actually literally happened. For so many years, I thought he was just following the continuity. Well, yes, that's true. There's the monument. Jason died. Till I realized that he actually put forth the idea himself that Jason died. Now, it can't do everything. Like, it presupposes there's no third Robin, like no Tim Drake or anything like that. But I mean, the whole point was, like, for many years, I knew the years and stuff like that, but I would read The Dark Knight, and never for a second did it occur to me that he just did that himself. And that, like, it would happen in real continuity 2 years later. Maybe that's what got people thinking about it.
That's crazy.
I'd assume that's what got people thinking about it. You know how they killed him off, right? Like, not in the comic, but like in real life, how it happened?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. Well, they actually made the idea to call a 1-900 number and vote. Fans killed him.
Wow.
People called to vote.
And had to pay to call.
Yeah. It was the whole thing where one of the editors at DC, like, it was the late 80s, and he was like, I realized that these 1-900 numbers were pretty, popular. It was like, I thought it was so stupid, like, people calling up these things and paying money. He's like, maybe there's some way we can use that. That's really literally where it came from and stuff. And actually, just about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe not that long, I'm not sure, but not too many years ago, it was a big controversy now about Jason being killed that way. Because supposedly new evidence had come out that the voting was rigged, that there was some lawyer in California that had done a bunch of calls himself somehow or something. I don't know if that's true, but there was a big thing about it at the time. That it was just the only reason it happened was because of the actions of this one guy who was supposedly a lawyer.
That's
some
fine.
lawyer in California that, like, figured out some way to, like, make a bunch of calls just so he could kill Jason off. But I don't know if they ever actually substantiated that or not, but it was just funny to hear about years later. Doesn't matter now. Jason's been back for years.
If that's true, that's pretty awesome.
But yeah, interesting thing to do with your time. But yeah, A Death in the Family is not even a good story. I mean, I agree with Jason being killed. It was a good move for the franchise, but yeah, just for so many years, like, I would just read Dark Knight, and it would never register that this was written before Jason was actually killed, and that it was just Miller's own idea to have this happen. But that makes me think that had to have put it in their heads in the first place, because everybody hated Jason anyway. Which is too bad, really. For the first 3 years of his continuity, he was the same. He was just Dick Grayson Part 2. Like, literally, he was another circus orphan who'd been, like, whose parents had been killed by bad guys. This time it was Killer Croc. That he really was. That's all it was. And then they finally revamped him and gave him a different actual backstory and actual personality and stuff, and people hated him. Oh, well. Anyway, he's been back in real continuity since 2003 anyway, as Red Hood. Which wasn't even a bad resurrection. As much as I like to criticize, comics always bringing back dead characters, at least he was dead for a good long time. And I did like him coming back in the stuff it did. But anyway, that's a whole thing. I haven't read any Batman at all in a while. Makes me sad. Well, unless you count what's going on in Metal. Metal's pretty cool, but I haven't read any, like, big Batman storylines, I guess is what I mean. But yeah, we don't need to drag this out too much, I guess. We can circle back with some closing remarks on Byzantium, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah, I just think it's a really solid entry into the vampire series of films, and I really think it's one that needed to be talked about. If even though we knew we weren't going to be able to go for a long time on this one,
sure.
I just think it's a solid film, and it's really kind of a shame it's been kind of forgotten.
Yeah, like, I don't know if I ever would have gotten around to it, really, if you hadn't mentioned it to me. Again, it was just sort of a title that I'd heard or seen, and I wasn't even 100% sure it was vampires. Like, I just heard about it in some offhand, secondhand fashion and stuff. So yeah, I was really glad to see it, and I had no idea who the director was at the time or anything like that. But yeah, really cool movie, and like you said, it's a good addition to vampire lore, because it takes some chances and does some original things, like the whole idea of how the vampires are actually turned, instead of, like, biting people to turn them, or vampires being born, or any of that. The idea that they go and make it some sort of pact with some sort of dark, again, kind of Lovecraft-esque, entity, on this mysterious island. I like that a lot, and I like how it's only supposed to be like a society, a male-dominated society, and then we get this story of this woman who was like an anomaly and always trying to stay ahead of the try to stay ahead of them. Like it shows like you can still do some pretty original stuff with vampires. You just have to not be too married to the rules. Again, I know I send mixed signals when I blab about vampires to people because there's certain things that people do with vampires that I absolutely hate and can't stand. So you don't do that. And I realize that's kind of a wrong way of thinking because we're not going to get more good stories like that if you don't have people that are willing to say, well, maybe we can change this and make it this. I mean, this was a good change. I'm not saying this should set the standard. This is how vampires should be from now on. I'm saying it's good that you can interpret vampires and present them in different ways. And I like this one very much. I think it's a good original way of doing it. It's pretty cool.
True.
So yeah, I think going forward with our more like softer themes and stuff. Now we've been kicking around the idea since we did Snow. We might do. I think we're looking at maybe a brief period of water films where water is central to the plot or theme. 2 or 3 of those. Nothing too heavy. And then go on from there. A title that obviously comes to mind that we think might get discussed is Waterworld. Because we do like talking about films that were, flops or misunderstood or whatever like that. We did a few. We did AI, which kind of counts. We did actually the other Spielberg, which I'm a huge fan of, Empire of the Sun.
Mm-hmm. Black Hole.
The Black Hole. Yeah, that was our most recent sort of flop type thing. So this was a huge historical flop for whatever reason. So I think that will probably be one we're going to 2 or 3. We're kicking around what some of the other ones are. So we're not entirely sure which exact one next week is. But next week we will embark on our vague water type series. So stay tuned for that.
Followed by The Postman and Wyatt Earp.
Oh, man. It's so I watched The Postman under like the weirdest circumstances. I watched The Postman on HBO in Cancun in in a hotel room in like the middle of the night, like 3.5 hours, wherever it was. I was just like, holy shit, this is on, and I'm going to watch it because I can. Because I'm 16 years old and I'm in Cancun and there's no adults to tell me what to do. I'm sitting there eating the Domino's that we ordered like 4 nights in a row. It was so expensive. Oh my god, the delivery was so expensive.
Oh, was it? Oh, wow.
It's funny, I eat Domino's all the time now because there's one really close to my neighborhood. But, growing up, before I lived in Halifax, there was no Domino's. So I think that's the first time I ever had Domino's was when I was in Cancun.
Wow. Yeah, Domino's gets a bad rap, but I like it.
I mean, as far as like a chain pizza goes, they're up there. And, I mean, there's some good things about my Domino's. One, again, it's super close, so I never get delivery. I can just go get it. And another thing is now they have a point system, which actually works. The last pizza I got there was free because I'd earned enough points, so that's always good. I mean, which is good because after a couple of years there was sort of a lapse because before I lived in this building, I lived in a flat, but only a few blocks from here, so I was still in the same general area. So I still used, and that's when I started going to the Domino's most. And there was like a 2-year period where like twice they sent me Christmas cards. Because I was such a valued customer.
Wow.
They get like a Christmas card with like a $5 off coupon in it. And when they stopped doing that, I was very upset. But I'm glad now they have a loyalty thing. So yeah, I don't know. I have no idea what non-pizza is like at Domino's except for the wings. Actually, that's the last thing I had there was I got wings on Super Bowl night because that's what I do for Super Bowl night. I don't watch the Super Bowl, but I eat wings in honor of all the people that do that. And man, I guess Domino's does pretty well still here. And obviously the Super Bowl's a big deal too. It's funny because like Orcs talking about like the Grey Cup and stuff like that with me back and forth, and I'm like I'm the anomaly. Trust me, it doesn't mean Canadians don't watch the Super Bowl. Canadians watch the hell out of the Super Bowl because when I was at Domino's to pick up my wings on Super Bowl evening, they were so swamped that like when people were calling them for delivery, they were telling them it was minimum an hour and a half wait for delivery. So yeah, so that was obviously people doing up Super Bowl quite nicely. But yeah, they're good. They're pretty good. Because I can get the coupons and stuff like that. And I'm always about fast and cheap. And pizza's a hard thing to eat when you live by yourself because it's usually more than you can eat. So you don't want to like waste a bunch of money because you're just like So, well, you know how it is. It's so much. Usually, it's just more worth your money. It's like, oh, I could get like a large pizza for 12.50 or whatever, or which is really big, but it's just me, so I'll get a small. How much is the small? Oh, it's $9.99. Like. So yeah, that's what I mean. It's hard from that perspective to get like just pizza for yourself unless you're just like a huge glutton and you can eat a whole bunch at once. I mean,
well, Orc said he orders like multiple pizzas at once,
yeah,
like one for later.
Yeah, see, that's like that's like what I do, but just with one pizza. Because yeah, I buy a pizza, I have some, and then what's good is the next day I can have the rest.
Yeah.
In Orc's case, it's 2 full pizzas. So I get it. I'm much smaller than Orc, so it makes sense. Not calling you a glutton, Orc. If you're a bigger person, you need to eat more. Duh. So there you go. But yeah, Domino's ain't bad. It's what I have to rely on here in Halifax. You've heard me and Riho mope because both of us are under the impression, we both believe, like, I don't know, some people care a lot about pizza. There's like areas where people care a lot. We came from an area where people care a lot about pizza, and like I rely on chain pizzas here like Domino's or Pizza Hut because like I think all the local pizza here sucks, and yet back in my hometown, which is much smaller than Halifax, like I think there's awesome stuff. That's like the main thing I do when I go home and visit my parents is like I order pizza because it's my like chance to like stuff my face with pizza. I much prefer to Domino's or anything I can get here. But talking about it now, I'll probably get pizza tomorrow because that's all it takes, man. I am a pizza holic for sure. When I was like in high school, I used to eat pizza like 4 times a week. Not even kidding. Because like my family would get it once a week. Thursday was our pizza day. And then I would eat it like 3 or 4 times a day, like in the week at school, because we had a cafeteria where you get meals and stuff. But we also, the school was like 2 seconds away from a popular pizza place. So every lunchtime kids would line up there. By the time I was in my second year of high school, they had just basically given in and made some sort of deal with the pizza place so that now their pizza was being sold directly from our cafeteria. So you didn't have to go over there to get it. And I would just, eat that multiple times a week. I didn't get sick of it. I'm not the type of person that gets sick of things. At least not pizza or chicken. Those are my 2 things. Chicken, I can go wrong with chicken. There's so many different ways to cook it and eat it. So I eat chicken a bunch of times a week. That's what I had today. Anyway, now we're straying into really stupid, boring, extraneous stuff. This is more sausage. This is more Sausage Factory talk than this. We can save all the fine dining stuff for Sausage Factory. This is we're supposed to stick to the highbrow film stuff on this, but anyway, so there's some bonus content. So yes, join us next week as we plunge into the water, and we'll do a couple of those. And I'm pretty sure you might get some Kevin Costner action, just for the hell of it. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. Great to have you with us, especially considering I know this is not our usual night again. I had to push the show to tonight, and I don't think we really gave anybody a notice what we're doing, but hopefully somebody finds out and somebody can know that the show happened or is happening. So if you're watching now, especially, thanks very much. So that's going to do it for the Pocket Dimension. That's Jay. I'm Cole. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you again really soon. Peace out. Thanks.
Thanks.